Welcome to Tree Felling for Dummies. My name is Noah Jackson and I'm a physicist who's been doing extensive research on the process of tree felling. Now if you don't know what tree felling is, it's the process of downing individual trees, or simply just cutting down trees. And if you're wondering how physics has anything to do with cutting down trees, I'll explain. Physics is never ending, and as the laws of physics constantly apply to everything. The three laws of physics theorized by Sir Isaac Newton stay true to all existing objects, and since trees are an existing object, they relate to physics. Newton's first law states that an object in motion will stay in motion, and an object at rest will stay at rest unless acted upon by a force. So when a tree falls, it will continue to fall until it meets the ground. His second law states that the force is equal to the mass times the acceleration. The force of a tree falling to the ground is equal to the mass of the tree times the acceleration of the tree. The third law that Sir Isaac Newton created or theorized states that there is an equal and opposite reaction for every action. Meaning, since forces come in pairs, when you say, push on a car, the car will push back on you. Or when gravity pulls down a tree, there is an equal force pushing up on the tree. This is the normal force. And the gravity is still pulling it down. The normal force keeps the tree from going all the way through the ground. Throughout my research, I've learned that an extensive knowledge of physics and these laws is key to safe tree felling. It is the difference between a licensed arborist and your do-it-yourself neighbor. While your neighbor may just pick up a chainsaw and go for it, an arborist takes into consideration the laws of physics in combination of all the risk factors. Now, before getting into the details of tree felling, a background of what it is all about is necessary. The art of tree felling has been around for thousands of years, as it did and still does provide many necessities to living, such as shelter. Back when trees first were starting to be felled, the tactic to drop them would be burning them until they were too weak to stand. The pioneers would set fire to the bases of the trees and would just allow the trees to fall whichever way gravity would pull them down. This was unsafe, but it worked for them. As time progressed, the pioneers started to use axes, and they'd use the axes to cut down the trees, and they had some control of where it dropped. Today with chainsaws, modern arborists use wedge cuts and a variety of tactics to drop trees in any direction they wish. Today's society now has chainsaws, and the tactics may have changed, but the same laws of physics that challenged the pioneers are challenging modern arborists today. Alright, now that you know the history of tree felling, we can get into it. As I mentioned before, a professional arborist will always consider the risk factors before felling a tree. Most trees that need to be cut down are far from ideal. Every tree presents its own challenges in different situations. Risk factors range from the weather to surroundings to the tree itself. Oftentimes the trees need to be cut down during less than ideal weather conditions. Whether it be raining, snowing, thundering and lightning, or windy, trees need to come down. Proper knowledge of physics allows trees to be felled in conditions like these. Besides weather, an additional risk factor is the tree's surroundings. Trees grow everywhere, so when felling trees, you may run into some that are surrounded by homes, buildings, cars, power lines, or anything else that needs to stay protected. The feller must recognize these surroundings and use physics to drop the tree in a desirable location. The final major area of risk is the tree itself, and this is where all the physics is needed. The feller must use their knowledge of physics to determine where the tree wants to fall. An ideal tree would be one that is perfectly perpendicular to the ground and has even branches going around. This is because the center of gravity of the tree would be right in the center of the tree. An ideal tree would look like this. It's got even branches on each side so that the center of gravity would be right in the center. This way, if you have a home on one side, the tree feller can cut a wedge and have the tree fall the way they want to. If you have too many branches on one side, the center of gravity will be shifted farther over and could be even sometimes out here. This makes it much more difficult to have the tree fall away from the house. This is because the center of gravity isn't going in the right way. So issues arise when the trees lean or have uneven branches, there's a hang-up, or it's a spring pole. Proper knowledge of physics will enable one to safely fell a tree, no matter the condition. The first thing to do when you go out and check out the tree is to observe it. Then, after having observed the tree, deciding where it wants to fall versus where you want it to fall, and considering all risk factors, the tree can be felled. For an ideal tree, as mentioned before, a tree that has the center of gravity in the center of the tree, the process is fairly simple. Using the wedge method, this tree can be dropped controllably. The wedge method is based off of physics and works because of the vertical strength of trees. How you do the wedge is you start with a perpendicular cut near the base of the trunk of the tree, and then you do a 45-degree angle cut coming back to cut out a wedge of the tree. You remove this wedge, and by doing so, you shift the center of gravity towards the side of the wedge. The center of gravity is the average location of the weight of an object, which means it is the point of an object which the torque created by gravity vanishes. So when the center of gravity moves over, the torque created by gravity is pulling the tree this way down. So now if you have a house over here, you can get the tree to fall the way you'd like it to. But gravity is not often strong enough to pull down the tree when just the wedge is out. Therefore, after this, the back cut is performed. It is performed slowly and is cut perpendicularly to the ground, a couple inches above the initial cut. It's normally cut about here, a couple inches above where you did your original perpendicular cut. As the back cut is cut, the tree will slowly begin to accelerate towards the ground as it leans further and further towards the wedge. Eventually, the tree's vertical strength will be too weak to compete with gravity, and the tree will come crashing down. As it leans further and further over, the center of gravity will continue to shift, and gravity will accelerate the tree easier and easier and pull it down faster. Now, this is a simple way to cut down an ideal tree, but for most trees, it is not this simple. The center of gravity is not often in the center of them, and therefore different tactics need to be used to drop most trees where you want them to go. This is a demonstration of how an ideal tree would be cut down.
Yeah.